Am I correct? Sumto. Sumto. From Sumto, then let me just pose two questions for now. Then we'll continue with the rest later. This is from Adiola Oladeji. All right. Okay. Hi everyone. Good evening once again. If you are from Nigeria, if you are in South Africa, good day. If you are in England, good evening. If you are from all parts of the world, right, wherever you are from, good day to you, and welcome to People in Products community events. Today, it's for the group mentorship session where we always have experienced product leaders in the industry to answer our questions, to attend to our concerns, and guide us through the things that are confusing, I would say. Today we share the privilege again to have Roger on the call. Roger is not anybody new in this community, and in fact, Roger is part of the community. Let me just put it that way. Um, Welcome to the call, Roger. Happy to have you for the first time on
Thanks.
this call for the year, and
Great to be
I'm
back.
also very happy to like have everybody on the call today. For those that are just for some people that are probably just joining the community, and I think most of the faces I'm seeing here are very common. But if there's anybody that is joining for the first time, um, we really want to just share a privilege to welcome you officially. If this is the first time you're joining the community, this is not something I would always do, but if you are on the call and you're joining for the first time, before we continue, could you just signify by probably raising up your hand so we can welcome you officially? All right. Can you imagine? So we have a lot of people on the call that are just joining for the first time. Let me just check the queue and I will mention the names. So we have Barry Dijum, we have Nsi Song, we have Claudia, we have Usiak, and we have Juliet. Welcome, guys, and welcome, welcome, welcome. Guys, can we welcome them officially for this minute? Just unmute yourself and say, welcome to People in Products Community. Can we do that together? One to go.
Welcome,
Welcome to
Welcome to
welcome,
people in the
welcome to
community.
People Products.
We love you and we hope that you are not going to leave us. Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much. Thank
Yeah,
you.
let's continue. Okay. So just for the sake of those who are just joining the community, so this is again group mentorship session. So we have these sessions, we used to run these sessions um bi-weekly, and we exchange it with another session which is going to be coming up next week. I'm not going to talk about that now, but just make sure you are available. Trust me, you don't want to miss any part of this. On Saturdays as well, we have our call where we just talk together as product managers and road minds. I'm also not going to talk too much about that now. So the focus today is our group mentorship session. For you to have the context of what we really do here on this call, we bring product leaders in the industry again who have a lot of experience and can really tutor us and teach us and guide us on some certain things that are not clear to us in our day-to-day practice. Roger have more than 10, 11, 12, 13 years experience in the industry. Trust me, you don't want to lose out on somebody like that. So please stay on the call and make sure you listen. All right. Also, be confident enough to ask questions. We are going to be taking a lot of that this year. So ask questions, be open to learning and all of those things. This is our official way of kicking off, kickstarting this event for this year. And I'm going to hand it over to Roger. Roger, so I'll just ask the first question, then I'll leave the other part to you. So there is a question from Sumto here. Sumto says, I recently joined a very small startup company as a volunteer, and we want to create a web app. I am the only product manager. At times, I feel overwhelmed and confused because there is no senior product manager to guide me. How do I go about it? That's a question from Sumto.
Sure. There's a couple of different layers at which to answer this question. From a starting point, your role, if you're the only PM on a small team, your role is to help people see how everything comes together. What is the problem you're solving and what are you trying to do? So if I were you, I would start with trying to map some user flows, just how the pages will be connected to each other, what that looks like just starting to map user journeys, process flows, which are sort of like all the different pages and how they would interact with features and those sort of things, and do it at a high planning level. The team, when you're working in a small startup team, things can change quickly. Your developers have a lot of initiative. They can interpret things. You can say, oh, we need Facebook login, and they can go and work out how to do that. Like, you don't need any more detail than that. Or we need a place to be able to add a form. These are the fields, and they can go do it. You don't need designs or forms. You don't need. So generally with startups, you're going to cut those corners. But what the developers don't always have is a whole picture of how the whole thing ties together. So if you're lending some time in or volunteering some time or working on it, that's where I would try and start, is try and wrap your head around what are all the different pages and how do they connect to each other, and which button do you click from this page to get to that page. And I'm not talking about I'm not talking about designs. I'm talking about like a flow chart that has, when you click this button, go to that step, and then this happens, and when you click that button, you go this page, or that button, and you go to that page. And it's kind of just getting an idea of how things tie together. So that would be the place that I start. That is assuming that the startup knows what they're solving, and it assumes that you're clear on the problem it is, and depending how mature it is. Somto, I don't know if you're on the call. I don't know if you want to just give me a little bit more color there. Like, do they have customers? Are they already solving the problem and they're just trying to flesh it out? Are you trying to build an MVP? Are you trying to approach it with to work out what the problem is? Do you want to just give me a little bit of clarity there? Because all of those could be very different answers. If you're on the call, either throw it in the chat or.
Please, are you on the call? I don't think there's any Somto on the call.
Okay.
Yeah. There's Somto on the call, actually. So, Chuku, are you the one? I can see a Somto Chuku. Are you the one? Can you speak?
Hello, good evening. Oh, sorry,
Right.
my network is bad. Yes, I'm the one.
Is it a very early stage startup? Do you have customers? Are you trying to work out what the MVP needs to be, or do you know what the MVP needs to be and you're trying to build it?
We don't have customer right now. We are trying to build MVP.
Okay, cool. So then scrap what the flow is. I would the biggest problem all startups make is they build too much too early before they actually know what the problem is. So I've just dropped a link in the chat. This was an article I wrote back in 2015, but I think it's still totally relevant. And it's around making sure that you understand the problem. So can I ask what problem are you solving? What area? What are you trying to do? What is the startup trying to do?
The app is all about rental apartments. We provide rent to people that need to rent apartments online.
Great. So the first thing you need to do is you need to separate the problem you're solving from the app you're building. So the problem you're trying to solve is to connect people with opportunities to rent. There are plenty of ways of solving that problem manually without any kind of app, right? You can, what you need is you need a database, you need a couple of images, and you can send people links to those images. You can send it as an emailer. You can have them fill out a form, submit what they want. You drop those images and a short list of 3 or 4 into a PDF and send it to them and get their feedback. What you need to do in the early experiments is work out what is it that we're doing differently that will make this, that'll actually make people want to use this. So how do I solve the customer's problem as quickly as possible? And normally that means diving in and actually solving the problems, not trying to build technology. As soon as you write software, you end up slowing down. My typical advice for startup founders is first you need to do it, then you need to document it, then you automate it. So by doing it, you need to dive in and manually deliver the service that you need to deliver. Almost 90% of all software, unless it's specifically IP driven about a machine learning algorithm or something super fancy, but most tech-enabled businesses, you can actually manually deliver it. It's called concierging it, where you are the system. You are it's a forms and web and basic websites, and you're doing all the heavy lifting in the background. The benefit of that is you can try something different, you can create a different angle, you can change your pricing, you can change your steps, you can change the fly. When something goes wrong, you can step in and fix it because it's all just manual. And once you know how to do it and you've done it, you've placed 10 people, 20 people in apartments, then you can start documenting it to say, how do we script this so that I can give it to an intern and the intern can deliver it? And then once you've got that script clear enough and you've run that script, somebody else has run that script or followed that process 10 or 20 times, you've probably got a clear enough script and spec to then try and write your software and then try and automate it. Too many people try and jump straight into automating it without actually doing or documenting it first. And what happens is as soon as you code it, you code what you think they need. And then to make a change, you can't just change something. You have to brief it to you have to work it out, design it, brief it to the developer. They make the change, they test it, then they deploy it. And so you get this lag in the cycle. And a startup is a learning machine. You're designed to try and learn as quickly as possible. That's what the whole lean startup build, measure, learn loop is about. And so it's all about how do you get through that loop as quickly as possible. And as soon as you write code, you slow down that loop. You slow down your rate of learning, and which is the most important thing you can optimize for as a startup. So as a PM, you should be working very closely with the founders to just solve the customer's problem, get them the value that you need to do, and over time you can iterate towards a better solution. In that article I posted, there's this thing. Let me share my screen very quickly just to get this drum this point home. There's this really great image of the of like how to build an MVP, and the benefit of, like, most people try and build a car. So the only way to build a car is you build a wheel, then the chassis, then the body, then you put it all together as a car. But your customer is completely unhappy all the way along until you've spent all the money, and then you've got the car and you realize actually the customer, that's not quite what they needed, and then to try and change it is really hard. Whereas if you focus on the problem, which is getting customers from point A to point B, you can do that with a skateboard. Then you can do that with a scooter. You can do it with a bike, and you might end up at a car. What might happen on this is, instead of realizing people don't want a Foster bicycle, they want a tandem bike, and they want minibuses and a transportation system. And you can iterate and learn your way to a totally different product to the one that you thought you needed up front. But you're following customer needs by delivering value to customers right off the bat as quickly as possible. There's a really great article interview by Lenny that I'm busy listening to it's by one of the guys from Silicon Valley. It's called The Essence of Product Management by Christian Idiodi. He talks about this. He talks about examples of how he's gone and MVP'd and just delivered a project. And the one project he did in the first year, at the end of the first year, they booked $30 million in sales. And they hadn't built any software before they actually shipped that. So he spent like a year just delivering the solution manually. And then he worked out exactly how to solve the problem, exactly how to do it. They had hired a team of interns. And at that point, they built the product and booked $30 million in their first year because they knew it was something people wanted. They had evidence that people really wanted this problem and that they were solving it in the best possible way. So the biggest problem people make when they're trying to build software in a startup is they try and build a car. Instead of trying to help customers get from point A to point B. And if you're problem focused, you're far more likely to be successful. That's my startup brand.
All right, thank you, Roger. Yeah, it does make sense.
Yes, I understand. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Somto, for that question. I'm going to move on to the next question. There's a question from Adiola Oladeji. The question is, what would you advise as the first thing for someone who is just starting out in product management? What would you advise as the first thing for someone who is just starting out in product management?
Cool. So my advice, once again, I've been asked this question a couple of times in these sessions. Here's an article on it, on how to build your PM career. The high level of my advice is to build your career like a Christmas tree. So you need to go hard and deep in one area first, then go really broad. And as your career develops, you start narrowing down on some kind of speciality. Now, the reason for that is product management is incredibly broad. It's everything from project management through to customer interviews, through to Scrum and like team management and process delivery, through to research, through to data, through to customer support. There's like a whole range of things it can be. And when you're starting out, you can't be an expert in all of those. The problem is, so in order to stand out, like when you're applying for a job, there's 100 other people applying for the same job. And if everyone has kind of average experience or like a smattering of very light touch experience, you're not really going to stand out. And so my advice is typically, like, every role that needs product management, specifically junior product management, they normally have a twist or a flavor. Like, they're needing this to do early product development, or they're needing it to do sort of more research, or they want to just manage the dev teams to free up the more senior product managers to work on the strategy, or there's always some kind of focus to the role that they want. And so my best advice that I have for junior PMs is be really good at one piece of the whole spectrum, and try and like double down on that. Be it analytics, be it customer research or an interviewing, be it like, or qualitative data, be it like Scrum and Agile or Kanban and project management, and get good at Jira and those sort of tools, or get good at the strategy and the planning and the connecting it to the business strategy. Like, work on one of those areas and build a pillar on that. And then when you apply for the jobs, for many of the jobs, you're probably not going to be standing out in the right way. But for some of the jobs that do want that, you're going to be head and shoulders above everyone else. But often when you apply for a role and you're like, hey, I'm really strong at qualitative analysis, I want to get into designs and wireframes, then they can see, okay, you've got the basis, we can teach you that. Like, get into product design. Or we've got the qualitative analysis, I'm really good at that. This is how I'm starting to build the same competencies in quantitative. You need a quantitative person. I can learn fast. I've mastered one area pretty well. I can master the next area pretty well. So it's going to set you out to have a slightly more opinionated CV when you're starting out. It'll help people stand out and help people connect when they need to connect. So that's typically my advice: is don't try and be a generalist when you're just starting.
That's like one of the best advice anybody can get for free at the very early stage, really. Thank you very much for that advice. And I believe it speaks to the right person. I mean, I believe that person is actually on this call, Adiola Oladiyi. And of course, it is also useful for every other person who needs that kind of advice. Going to the next question, Roger. This person says, "Hi, Roger. Thanks for today." Okay. So probably you did some sort of good gestures to.
Easy. I'm done.
Yeah. The person said, "Thanks for today. Please, how can a product manager move from health tech to fintech without knowledge of fintech? Okay. How do you convince your interviewer/employer that you can work as a fintech PM?" All right, that's a question. I really like this question.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. I guess my advice would be to try and find what is common. So there's certain skill sets that are going to be you're going to need to master, or certain aspects of being a health tech focus, and there's certain aspects of being a fintech focus. What I would challenge you to do is try and find where there is overlap, or where there is skills that you've developed in health tech that will translate well into, like, hey, you've done it here, therefore you'll be able to do it there. An example might be regulations, or data security. Data security and data privacy and HIPAA compliance is a really big thing in health tech, and building almost any kind of health tech thing. And data privacy, like the POPI Acts or the personal identifiable information, GDPR, those sort of things are really big in also in health tech, but specifically in fintech as well, when you're dealing with people's money and people's personal information. So how do you position yourself so that the skills you developed in that health tech are also applicable here? And how do you showcase that? When you look at like being heavily on contracts, being needing a ton of reliability of like the things that you build need to be super robust. What are the practices that you've learned in health tech that will also be useful when you apply them to fintech? And so you need to try and find those parallels. Some things will be very different, like understanding of financial credit markets or financial payment flows or those sort of things. But where you can find overlap, try and find the aspects of the healthcare, your healthcare experience that will be applicable, and then build that as a foundation. Having said that, those areas where you can spot the gaps, that's where you need to start taking some kind of initiative. Learn the phrases, learn the processes, try and do some research in that space to show that you haven't had experience in that before, but of a little bit of research, this is what you've learned, and you want to learn, and you acknowledge that that's a growth area, but you think that learning that will be easier than learning these other core competencies that you've already mastered. And so that's kind of how I would try and position it when you're transitioning.
All right, thank you so much, Roger. I believe that answers the question for the person.
Maybe just to expand on that slightly into a slightly broader question, which also comes up quite often, is how do you transition into product management from customer support, or how do you transition in from marketing, or how do you transition in from a developer, or being like one other area? And the advice is the same. Find what is common between your experience and product management. As I said, product management's pretty broad. So find where the overlap is and use that to kind of create the beachhead or solid ground. Like this is what I'll be really good at, and these are the things that are adjacent to that I'm starting to learn. So if you're trying to get into product management from something, trying to find that overlap is typically where I would start.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Roger. Thanks so much for that addition. So there's also a question from someone here, Onyedika Nwachiku. It says, thanks for being here, Roger. How would you approach discovery? Please hold on. I think question is escaping my view. Okay. How would you approach discovery when you're tasked with identifying how to adapt your product in a market/space where your product is not dominant? Do you want me to take that again?
Yeah, just go through that one more time.
Yeah. How would you approach discovery when you are tasked with identifying how to adapt your product in a market or space where your product is dominant? I'll drop it in the chat again, just so you can easily get your eyes through it.
So are you already dominant and you're trying to move to a new market? Or oh, your product is not dominant. Okay. So what you need to think about, so moving into a new market is more a sales problem than a product problem. And there's exceptions to that. And if there are exceptions to that, then you should.
Richard, can you hear me?
Yes.
No, you are not dominant yet. You are not dominant when the product is not dominant.
Yes, not dominant, but you're moving into a new market or a new space. So what you need to look at is, like, normally your product will already be doing a whole bunch of cool things in one space, in one domain, in one country. And so as you look at expanding to a new country, it's more about a market and market positioning and a market understanding than it is around product features. It's not about, oh, what features do we need to build for this new market? It's how do we position what we have built to still be valuable in this market? And so it's more a product marketing question than a product build or product question, a product features question. And so to that end, I would look at, in this new space, do a competitor analysis or a competitor review of what are the competitors to this product that we're moving into. And here it's worth noting that a competitor is not somebody who does what you do. A competitor is somebody who your customer will use instead of using you. So for every financial management app, Excel or Google Sheets is your biggest competitor. So it's like, because your customers will use that instead of paying you money or instead of using your solution. So if you put that hat on, you say, what are the problems that we can solve for our customers? How are they already solving those problems? And then how do we position our product to be better than those options at solving that problem? And so that's kind of how I would do the analysis of how you want to break down what you need to build or how you need to expand that. It would be looking at that, looking at where the gaps are, and it's more like, how do you position your product in that larger market compared to the other options or the competitors that your customers are already using? And that could be in a new space in your same market. It could be the same space in a new market, whatever that looks like. Like, that's what you need to look at tweaking. And so kind of doing a reflection on that, and probably taking features out to make sure it solves the problem, and then only adding the ones back in that actually solve that problem. Often when you have a mature product in one market, when you try and move to another market, a whole bunch of the core features will all apply, but a lot of the fringe features are specific to that use case or specific to that market. And so actually, by stripping those away and launching a simpler product in the new market, you can then add new features or turn them back on. You just uncomment them out the code or use feature flags. You can slowly turn them back on to make sure that the product is fit for the right market, so that those features you're turning on actually solve the problem in that new market as well. And another analysis is to look at why does your product succeed in this existing market or this existing space? What are the things that are true in this market that make it work? Is it because it's very regulated, or is it because there's a lot of competition, or what is the factors, the market environmental factors that makes your product succeed there? And then analyze, are those factors true in this market that I'm trying to move on? And then looking at how do you do that evaluation on the other side? So does that answer the question? I ran a little bit there, but I hope that gets it across.
All right. I believe it answers the question for Oyedika. Oyedika, if you're on the call and you want to speak, could you please do that?
Does anyone have a follow-on question? If you want to, this is very much a discussion as well. If you have something to add or a question to ask, raise your hand, drop it in the chat. We can build on it.
Hi, Roger. Hi, Ola, Sandy.
Right.
Thanks for the answer. I think he answers a lot. I think I was looking for kind of like a magic bullet. I think I really like the point of reviewing why your product is successful where it currently is. I'm trying to look at those conditions present in the other market where you're trying to move towards. So, I've tried looking at it from the angle of, okay, how do we solve the same problems? Can we solve the same problems for people in the other market? But looking at also other factors, probably environment regulation and stuff like that, would also help. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Cool.
All right. Thank you very much, Oyedika. Okay, I'll just go to the next question. I can see. I can see a lot of chats. I'm just trying to look out for the next question. Okay, I see a question from Claudia. Hello, Roger. What are some of the things you look out for when hiring a junior PM? I think this person has 2 questions, so I would like you to just take it one after the other. So this one's first.
Yeah, so a junior PM, they need to have a base level understanding of the terms, the phrases, what product management is, those sort of things. One of my personal interview questions that I ask of product managers at all levels, even when I'm hiring like CPOs or head of products and stuff, the question for them is product means a lot of things to a lot of people. What does it mean to you? So having a concise answer for that is really, really important. And I expect different people at different levels to answer that question slightly differently. And that's totally fine. There isn't a one textbook answer. But I'm trying to test, do you have an understanding of what value you bring to a team and how you plan on working with others? So having a base level understanding of terms like what is a user story, like what is a PRD, what is Scrum or Kanban, what is value delivery, what is customer discovery, knowing what those things mean and more or less how they fit together. I typically work in startups or very early stage situations, so it's a lot around looking at new product development. So do you know the basic, the lean startup or the design thinking process? Do you have some kind of familiarity with how you test, build, and deliver a software, new software as you're discovering it? Are you experimental? Do you think about that? So I'm looking for a very base level understanding of what those things are. I totally expect to teach most of the things that I need and sort of craft it in that direction. But having that base level understanding, I would say, is the first thing I look for. And then the second thing I look for is attitude and aptitude. So do you have the right aptitude to lean in, and are you hungry, and do you want to learn? And the second thing is, do you have the right attitude in that you're going to, so the one is around wanting to learn, and the other one is around just how you approach the work. Are you fun to be around? Are you going to be a personable person? Because the one thing about product management in general is it's so much of it is stakeholder management and negotiating with people or learning, trying to get information out from people that they don't know what they're trying to tell you. Like when you're interviewing customers, half the time, if they say what they think you want to hear, they're probably going to tell you the wrong thing. So it's got to be really good with chatting to customers, with working with developers, with chatting to managers or people in sales and gathering information and putting things together. So if you're chatty, if you're going to be able to like work with other people. You don't need to be an extrovert. You can totally be an introvert too. But in most PM roles, like for a junior role, you're going to need to be able to get along and coordinate with people. And so being personable is a really big thing for me. So those are the prime things, like base level of understanding, the right attitude and the right aptitude is kind of what I look for.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rija.
Sure.
There's another question here. How would you advise a PM intern to learn technical knowledge to better communicate with developers?
Okay, cool. I'll find one more story for you, one more article for you here. That technical PMs don't need to be. You don't need to learn how to code to be technical. So there's a bunch of things that you can learn that that will help you communicate much better with developers. I'm throwing it in the chat here. So there's a bunch of skills at a very high level. I mean, by all means, read the article, but at a very high level, it's like SQL and JSON. So learning how databases work, data structures, like how to query a database, how to, like, what is a JSON payload? If you look at it, can you identify what's actually going on? Because that's any kind of data work you're going to deal with. You're going to need to learn how to use that. So Google SQL, Google JSON, watch a couple of YouTube videos. That a basic entry-level understanding of that would get you a long way. The other thing is to think about APIs and auth. So how do APIs work? What are APIs? What is authentication? What are different types of tokens? It can get super technical, but just have a basic understanding of what that looks like. There's a bunch of open source APIs out there. You can use this really cool little tool called Postman to connect to APIs and make calls and make callbacks. A lot of code, like even in Stripe help docs, you can actually make the API calls in their documentation and explains to you how to make it and how to call it. So basic understanding of that goes a really long way. And the third piece is on like a modern web stack, which is literally just go to your developers and ask for what is the architectural diagram behind what they're building, and can somebody spend an hour talking you through what the services are and how they fit together. Like what is a database layer? What is the API or web app layer? What is the consumer layer? Which parts of, where are the code bases sitting? Are they on AWS or are they on Google Cloud or something self-hosted? Why did we choose that? Just knowing all the parts and how they fit together gets you a really long way as well. So all of those things are not writing code, but they'll give you a much better understanding when you're talking to developers, or when they say, oh, we can't make this change because it's on a different server. You're like, oh, okay, I have a basic understanding of the web stack. I understand why that would be a difficult thing to change, even though it's just adding this field onto that page, because it's actually totally separate databases. And so it's like that's kind of thing of just having a basic understanding of those three things significantly helps conversations with developers, in my experience.
All right, thank you, Roger. There's a question from Abraham Elizabeth. Hello, Roger. What are the important things we are to focus on doing a competitor analysis for your products? Like, what should we focus on while doing a competitor analysis for your products?
Yeah, so I think the best question is to not focus too much on your product. Like, there's plenty of, you'll always be able to find things that are completely unique to your product that you can stand out on. I think of that, there's like that motivational poster of four forks and the one is all twisted. And it's like, just because you're unique doesn't mean you're useful. And so it's not about positioning it from doing competitor analysis on your product. It's looking at a competitor analysis from your customer's lens of like, how does your product deliver value to the customer, and how do the other competing products deliver value to the customers? So if you're doing a competitor analysis, you need to do that from the customer's point of view of how are we, like how do you solve that problem and how do other customers solve the problem? What problems do they solve that you don't solve? And are those problems actually valuable to the customer? And so that's kind of what the hat you need to put on is, what is the customer, what are their biggest problems? And then look at how our product solves it versus the other products that might solve that problem for the customer. And so once again, the competitor is not somebody who does what you do, it's somebody who your customer will use instead of you.
All right, thank you, Roger. Abraham Elizabeth, are you on the call? Does that answer your question? Do you need more clarifications? Are we good to go? Or is there any other person who needs more clarification on that? All right.
Okay. Yeah. Good evening. Good evening,
Yeah.
everyone. Good evening, Richard. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Elizabeth.
So, yeah, he answered my question, right? But I always have these difficulties in this, coming to research, right? You have to do research for everything, doing research for your user, doing research for your industry, and also the competitors. So, I always struggle on this, trying to do research for the competitors because, okay, fine. I just started this company, and we are trying to build these new products, right? And you go out there, maybe like a fintech products, and you're searching on different people doing this kind of product, and you're like seeing close to like 10 people, though you can still call them your direct. We have different sections, we can split them direct, indirect, and so on. So seeing like 10 companies doing this same products, and you have to do research on everything, and it leads to confusion over, you get overwhelmed. So I don't know, I want to know how the senior
How many?
product managers, like, how did they go about this research? How did they sort it out? And
Okay.
how are they able to figure out, the main thing that can really sort that complaint, or that sort that complaint out from other competitors? I got what he said, but I still need that in-depth knowledge on how to go about the process.
So how a senior, that was my follow-up question was going to be, how senior do you want this answer? But if you want the senior answer, so a senior PM or a head of product CPO, how I would expect them to approach that problem is like, what needs to be true for us to win? So what is the strategy? What is our differentiator? What is the secret sauce or the knowledge that we have that the competitors don't have? Like, what is that angle that we're leaning into that the others can't compete on, and use that as the core to make sure that you're building the differentiated product that stands out in a particular way. So if you're trying to build the same product with the same set of features as everybody else, it's going to be very difficult to stand out, and it just becomes a race to the bottom on features. But if you're more senior, and what you're thinking about on a strategic level is like, what is our secret sauce? What is our unique angle? And what needs to be true in order for that to be true? So I'll just use an example of the company that I'm in right now, and how I think about what we're doing. We're looking at so I work for a company called OK Hi. We do digital digital address verification. It's an SDK that fintechs and banks put in their sign-up flow. We drop a pin on a map. It creates a geofence on your mobile device, tracks your movements over the next few days in and out of that geofence, and to verify that you actually live there or not. But so when I came in, I joined about 6 months ago, and one of the first things I was doing is like, what needs to be true for us to win in the long run? And the entire business model is tied around, you have the one-source verification, which a standard verification takes 1 to 2 days. But that's one address. We incur all the costs of Google Maps and servers and machine learning algorithms and all of that. Like the backend, we incur all those costs for a single verification. So for this product to succeed, we need to be able to spend that cost once, but be able to sell that verification multiple times. So how do we do that? Well, there's something called re-verification. So some high-risk customers want to re-verify every 3 months to check that they're still living in the same address. Or instant verification is, once we verified you for one customer, if another customer asks for the same person and the same address, we don't need to incur all those costs of running that verification, because we already got the verification. We can do that. So thinking about like the core elements, like if that's the strategy of how we're going to win, is reselling the same address multiple times, what needs to be true in the product that's not true today, that in order for us to get there? And so I've spent the last few months like working on how we remove duplicates. Is like a major problem for me, because every time the same person creates a different address, we're diluting a core value, which is re-verification and instant verification. So how do we remove duplicates? How do we clean up the user address book? And so those sort of things they weren't focusing on before, but it's incredibly important to me because it enables the business strategy to actually work in the way it has. What's going to make us unique in a competitor landscape is that everyone's going broad on KYC and we're going deep on address verification. So we solve address verification in a way that nobody else does globally. But we will never go broad, because you have to localize as soon as you do that. Our solution works out of the box. Well, it works globally out of the box because it's just one very thin slice. And so then we think about, well, how is that a competitive edge? And so I'm actually starting to go to our competitors and saying, hey, we do this one thing way better than you ever would because you're focusing here. Why don't we partner and you can integrate what we do? And I'm using all our direct competitors basically as resellers that they can embed what we do into their solution and basically on-sell us to all their customers. And they get the benefit of way better address verification. And we get the benefit of not having, like, just getting access to a ton of customers. But that all comes from a core strategic standpoint of how are we different to everyone else in the market, and what needs to be true about the product in order for us to win, and what are those core levers or core components that we have to get right. If you think of Superhuman, like the email thing that came out, there was Superhuman, there's Hey, and Gmail was the components. Like, each of those were very opinionated on a specific thing that they believed was a better way forward. And they focused their entire product solution around being differentiated in that way. And so they lent into that, and that changes a whole bunch of the decisions around how you do that. So as a senior, when you're looking at competitor analysis, you're thinking about where do I take my product, those are the types of questions I would be asking is what needs to be true in order for us to win, and how are we going to be different from other people out there? What needs to be true in order for us to be different and for us to stand out? What do we have that nobody else does? And how do we make that the thing of why somebody would choose us?
Thank you so much. You just answered my question.
Okay, great. Just a heads up for everyone else on the call. I can totally answer questions at junior levels, mid levels, or senior levels. If you want to indicate like which level you want the answer at, I'm totally happy to peg it more.
Exactly. That makes sense. Thank you. I'm trying to see, is there someone raising his or her hand? Let me see. Okay, nobody. So going to the next question. I want to be sure I'm not skipping anyone really. Okay, this was the last question I took. Okay, so this is a question from Sandra Willie. I am the only PM in my team, and we are currently building a B2B product for a client. My question is, since this is a client's product besides product delivery, what should be my focus?
Sure. So often in B2B, and this is a great way to build a product, is you focus in on one customer and build something that solves a problem for them.
There's an additional information here. I'm just starting off as a PM, and it's my first experience. Yeah.
So, firstly, if this is your first experience, you're in for a ride, because that's quite a big task. So B2B is typically quite a lot harder. Normally, what you want to do is you want to try and solve the problem for this customer in the best way possible, and so that should be your focus. Spend 70 to 80% of your time just focusing on that. I would then spend 10% of my time trying to find other customers that might also have this problem. So depending on like the problem you're solving, you say, might somebody else have this problem? And try and interview them or reach out to them or take them for coffee or just ask them about their problem, do basically a product discovery call, to try and understand the problem space. And what you're looking for specifically is, do they have the problem in the same way that this customer has the problem that we're building it for? Or what is the same and what is different about their problem? And if you could chat to 5 other customers or PMs in those companies or people in compliance or whatever it is, whoever your customer is, if you can chat to 5 other people around the same problem, you should start getting a pretty good idea of what's consistent across the industry and what's unique just to this customer. And so then you want to make sure in whatever the team is building, the other 70-80% of your time you're doing, that you're building it in such a way, and in fact, that last 10 to 20% of the time, I would say you focus on like extracting out the bits, separating the way you're designing or the way you're building to the bits that are common and the bits that are unique. And the bits that are unique should be add-ons or features, or split them out into a separate page or some kind of thing that if you were to take this product to another customer, you could turn them off or hide the page or or remove some aspect of that without breaking the whole thing and still deliver value to the new customer, even without this one piece that is unique to that other customer. So you typically want to try and build, like absolutely build the product that solves the customer's problem. But at the same time, chat to a couple of different people, get an understanding of what's common, what is common and what's unique, and then think about how the team is actually building the software and chat to the developers about that and prioritize tasks and features and try and get them to build the technical architecture that enables you to separate what's consistent and what's unique. So that you can, if you were to duplicate the code, you can quite easily remove what's unique and deliver what's consistent. Okay, is that a follow-up question?
That a follow-up question, yeah. If it is, please.
Yeah, it is a follow-up question. Thanks again, Roger. So the follow-up question is on the conversations with your customers, right? So trying to learn more about their problems. Are there specific questions you ask repeatedly across boards? For example, a question that you always have in mind whenever you're chatting with a customer, maybe what are your biggest challenges, or how would you do this, or how would you do that, something like that. Are there questions that always come up?
Yeah, so one of my go-to questions for qualitative customer discovery calls is, what is the hardest part about X? Like, what is the hardest part about this? Like, what is the hardest part about finding staff? Or what is the hardest part about settling payments? Or whatever it is. You're asking super open-ended questions and see where they take the answer. And you always want to, your second question always wants to be, why is that a problem for you? And so you want to always dig deeper. And so typically you want to, if you spend 15 to 20 or even half an hour chatting to someone, just asking those types of questions, saying what do you struggle with? Why is that a problem? That's a unique nuance. Is that specific to you guys? Have you had this at previous companies you've had to work at? Or looking at how big a problem for you is that? What is the effect on the business for that? Why does it have that effect? And try and ask a why question to every answer they give you. That'll give you more, because often when you ask a question, people will give you the superficial answer. Then when you ask why is that true, they'll actually give you the real answer, which is more principled approach or a structural approach behind why they answered that way. So that's typically how you want to do it. But I normally start with, what's the hardest part about X?
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Roger.
All right. Thank you so much, Roger. And I think we might be able to take one or two more questions. I will just go to the next question here from Gabriel Harry. It says, I'm interviewing for a PM role at a digital media company. Since most interview prep resources focus on fintech, med tech, and other more popular fields, I'm wondering if there are any questions. I'm wondering if there are any questions specific to product management for digital media product that.
Yeah. So what do you mean by digital media? I have a bunch of ideas. It could be everything from an interactive video platform to a game to anything, a whole bunch of things in between.
Gabriel, are you on the call?
Yeah, I'm on the call. So
all right.
Basically a digital media company that has that produces online content on they have a website and they have a YouTube channel. Basically they produce content.
Okay. And so what is your role, project management or product management?
Products.
Okay, so what is the product?
The product is basically their digital magazines. That's the product.
Okay. Yeah, so
as well as other storytelling platforms, their YouTube channel, their basically their YouTube channel and their digital magazines.
Yeah, so the two, all of those are very simple end problems. I mean, I would probably approach it thinking more from a product marketing point of view, as well as a content distribution point of view. So those are the two aspects of it. So normally they'll have a bunch of different platforms that will be end customer facing. And so the product marketing aspect is, how do you create interlinks between all of those things? How do you create viral loops? How do you create reshareability? How do you, like, if you start looking at your user funnels and your user flows, what does activation, acquisition, activation, engagement, and retention actually look like across all those different platforms? How would you get users to move through that? How do you create nudges to keep users coming back? And so that's what I mean when I say product marketing. I'm thinking about those kinds of mechanics of how do all the bits fit together, and how does the user find and engage with all of those components. The second piece is around content distribution and content moderation. So it's like, how do you not moderation, I forget the word, it's late. But how do you look at like where they generate the content, where they store it, and then how they distribute that across the multiple different platforms? How can you simplify that process, more like a product operations type role, but looking at like, how do we connect all these systems together so they can create one piece of content, and we splice out little bits to make Instagram shorts, and we have the longer video on YouTube, and then we have a whole bunch of stills that pull into a magazine, or automatically pull out a bunch of screenshots out of what it's processing. So it's thinking about how do you maximize the effectiveness and the distribution of a limited amount of content. Because a large part of a media company, that's kind of what they're needing to do, is how do you get them to do as little work as possible and create as much surface area as possible. So the one would be around user flows and interactions across the various different platforms, and the second would be around content maximization. How do you get the most out of all the pieces of content? That's probably how I'd approach it. I'm not an expert in this field. Just caveat if you didn't get that from my answer.
Thank you so much. That's actually really helpful, like breaking it down into those two sections: user flows and interactions, and then content management and moderation. That's how
Cool. There's a guy called Brian Balfour from, where is he from? Anyway, he's got a bunch around, even the Dave McClure's Pirate Metrics, the AARRR, looking at acquisition, activation, revenue, retention, reach, of like, how do you actually, or referral, how do you actually run through those different flows, and how do you create links between all the different platforms to keep users engaged?
Thank you. I'll look into that.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm with you, Roger. I'm with you. So time is fast spent. I think we have some other questions, but I would really not be taking those questions. Ojo Precious, Samuel Sawyer, Agatha, and I think Imo Anselm rather. Please, can you move your questions to the Slack channel? You have two options. You can either move them to the Slack channel, or if you feel like you want us to take these questions, like in the next group mentorship session, you can check the community channel, right, on the Slack, right? I think the general group, if I'm correct, you will see a link to the question. So you can just drop the question on that link, via that link, and we'll be taking those questions in the next session. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I mean, this is the first group mentorship session for the year, and trust me, this was really a very good way, or this is a very good way to like get the year started, because I can tell you that even myself, I've learned a lot today just by listening to people asking questions and to Roger answering those questions. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. For those that just joined for the first time, you are highly appreciated and we love you. We don't want you to go, so please, operations, please, if you can do me a favor. I mean, for those who have not joined the community group, because I mean, we might just have anybody like that, can you drop a link to our Slack channel here so that they can quickly run to the Slack channel and be part of us? Thank you very much. And on Saturday, having our check-in call, our weekly check-in call, where we just get to rub minds, talk about how work was, what we experienced during work for the week, and just rub minds together. At the same time, we always have seminars on Thursdays. I want to confirm again, please. Do we have any seminar this, like any webinar rather?
There is no webinar.
Okay. So we are not having a webinar this week, but I mean, probably in the upcoming weeks, we are going to be having webinars. Just stick to us through our channels, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and all the other channels that we have. so you can always get first time update about our events. And can we just do a loud, or how will I put it now, a resounding, or just give a reaction? Really, I don't want to start throwing dramas that I don't know, to appreciate Roger for launching us forth into the new year, with so much to go with. Thank you, Roger. Thank you for the advice. Thank you for the information you shared. Thank you for not holding back. I think that's one thing I love so much about Roger. Before you start asking, Roger is really giving you some articles. I think a lot of people can testify to that. Sometimes I feel like, are you really keeping these articles with you? Just for that question. That's to show you how committed Roger is to this community. Thank you so much, Roger. We love you.
Most of the articles come from these sessions when I get asked the same question. That's why I've got the articles, because I've answered these questions a couple of times before.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And have a nice week, everybody. And we'll see on Saturday. Princess is about to say something. Please.
Princess is on as well.
Right.
Roger posted in the chat, there are some people that their questions weren't answered. So if you don't want to send it in for the next group mentorship session, you can send your questions to the questions channel. So I think from Ojo, Precious down to Agatha or Imo, I believe, post your questions on the questions channel and tag Roger. So he has specifically asked that you tag him, and he would answer your question in case you can't wait for the next 2 weeks for our next session. Thank you so much.
Just give me some time to respond. And please fill out the feedback form that's going to get emailed to you. I love getting that feedback.
Yes. Yes. Very important. Please fill the feedback form. We're looking forward to that. It helps us to improve and make things better. Like it was mentioned earlier, we're going to be having interview prep session next week. So if you would like to be an interviewee to improve your interview skills, please just fill in the form and we can get in touch with you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.